Hello, listeners. As we finish off the summer with our big moves, we continue our reruns looking at a different world. This one is very special. We talk with Neema Barnette. What an incredible director and 80s TV lady.
I learned another lesson doing Frank's Place, that so many Black actors are so broken and damaged that when you give them a little attention, they don't even know how to take it.
Welcome to 80s TV Ladies with your fabulous hosts, Sharon Johnson and Susan+lambert+hatem.
Hello, I'm Sharon.
And I'm Susan. We are super thrilled for today's guest. She is an Emmy-winning artist who has one of the most incredible television directing resumes in Hollywood.
Prominent and prolific director, writer, and producer Neema Barnette has engaged audiences with a body of compelling, socially and politically charged work that defies the narrow stereotypes of African Americans usually depicted in entertainment for over 30 years. She was the first Black woman to ever direct a sitcom and the first Black woman ever to get a 3-picture deal.
Miss Barnette grew up in Harlem and started working in theater in New York. She went on to direct over 50 television shows and movies and was the producing director for the first season of Ava DuVernay and Oprah Winfrey's Queen Sugar.
And she started in 80s television working on such amazing ladies shows like It's a Living and A Different World. Neema Barnette, welcome to 80s TV Ladies. We're so happy to talk with you today.
Well, thank you, Sharon. I'm excited to be on 80s TV Ladies podcast. I'm excited to be here. My whole career started in the 80s when I got accepted to AFI Women's Directing Workshop and went from Harlem to Hollywood and changed my life. So 80s was an interesting time for me. So I'm happy to be on board.
Thank you so much. You were one of the first amazing 80s ladies that were on our list.
Wow.
Almost from the beginning.
Well, thank you. I'm honored.
Because you were groundbreaking and were on so many great 80s ladies shows. So,
Yes, a very powerful CV, Ms. Barnette.
Yes.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Don't ask me how I did it, but I know it's interesting because, I started off in theater. And when I got accepted to AFI, the first thing I did was call Gene Furstenberg and said, well, can't you affiliate the program with someone from New York? Because, I went to the original high school of performing arts. So the only people I knew in Hollywood were out-of-work actors who didn't go to college like me and all flew to Hollywood to, start their acting career. So they couldn't be any help. And she said to me, Neema, the whole thing is you have to come to Hollywood. So I packed my bag and I went from Harlem to Hollywood and did my thing. But the interesting thing is after I got my first job on my AFI film, which took me a year to finish, was an after-school special about Donna Cheek, the first Black equestrian rider, and her struggle to get into the Olympics. She played herself, so maybe that's why nobody else wanted to do it. But anyway, I got the gig. After that won a daytime Emmy. I don't know how, but it was an interesting journey. Coming from theater, you think you're the boss, and so when I did the Donna Cheek story, I had a male DP who was very chauvinistic. And I didn't know very much because back then, the Women's Directing Workshop, they didn't give you any lessons on film. You put your hand in a hat, you took a number, and then your turn came. So he would ask me, where do you want the camera? And being the little bitch I was from New York, I kept telling him to move. Oh, I don't like it there. I don't like it there. I didn't know much, but I knew I was his boss. So after about 7 times, I said, okay, leave it there. And then I'll tell you if I want to change my mind again, And it was after that I knew I had to learn lenses and everything else because being a woman, particularly a woman of color, they were going to question me around every corner. So I had to, know my stuff. But when I started my AFI film, like I would shoot Lawrence Hookham Jacobs. And then I told the DP, okay, let's go. And he said, no, Neema, now you shot him. You have to turn the camera around and you have to shoot the person that he's talking to. I said, oh, okay. And that's how I learned. That's how little I knew. But then there was a woman, Barbara Corday, who was the president of Columbia Television at the time. And I thought, well, since I did theater, maybe I should start off trying to observe on sitcom, because sitcoms are kind of like, theater. Mm-hmm. And so I got to observe under Tony Singletary, who was directing What's Happening Now. And I gave him my little reel, which consisted of my AFI film and that after school special. And the executive producer said, oh, her stuff is too much like David Lynch or John Cassavetes. She could never do TV, blah, blah, blah. So there was a Black woman who was the assistant to the executive producers. And she took my reel and she went into Barbara Corday's office and showed it to her. Barbara Corday called up those executive producers and said, give that girl a job. So they had to give me a job. And the first day on the set, they all came running out and said, Neema, we did our research and we found out that there's never been a Black woman who ever directed a sitcom before. And I said, oh my God, this is terrible. I don't know what they expected me, what kind of response they expected. But, so that's the day I made history, because I was the first Black woman to ever direct a sitcom. I'll never forget it. Of course, the stage manager was a white guy, very chauvinistic. And I remember going in the bathroom and shedding a tear or two in the bathroom. And Shirley came on. I don't know if you guys know. Remember Shirley from What's Happening Now?
Your episode was called Shirley's Little Sister.
Oh my gosh,
I
you did your homework.
It.
Yes. And that episode did get nominated for an NAACP award. It was their first nomination in all the years they ever, because I put my 2 cents in. Now, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to put my 2 cents in television, but I did, because Shirley's little sister, right? She was a big sister to a woman who had a lot of children. And my complaint was, just because she has a lot of children, that doesn't mean she's a bad mother. She volunteered her kids to be in the Big Sister program, on and on. They looked at me like I was on crack, but I got things changed, and Shirley came in and she said, what's wrong? And I said, well, nothing, I'm okay. That stage manager, he's a little tough. She said, don't you worry, Neema, we got you. Yeah. So, the cast had my back.
That's
100%.
Huge.
Yes. And we did the show. And I learned a lesson in that show that, my people had my back, and a lot of women, no matter what color they wore, had my back, and were happy to see that I was there. So I went on, and that gave me strength to fight a lot of the battles that I fought after that. And then they decided not to publicize it. They took all these photographs of me, and Columbia Pictures, they were going to publicize it, but then I guess they decided not to, because I think I heard that they were embarrassed that no Black woman had ever directed a sitcom up to that point. Debbie Allen had directed Fame, but that was film. That was my first experience that really taught me to fight the battle for image control and fight the battle for balanced images, because people were hungry for it, and that a lot of people were happy that I was there, and they had never had that experience before, working with a woman director or a Black woman director. There were a few, but very few Black women or women of color at that time. Very few women, period,
We've certainly been seeing that as we're looking back at the shows that we've covered so far. And yeah, things have changed, but not nearly enough, but it's happening.
Oh yeah, it's big change. I'm sitting here being interviewed by you wonderful, beautiful, smart ladies. I tell you, I didn't think I'd live to see it. I was born in 1959. I didn't think I'd live to sit in front of you ladies, to take meetings with female executives, to read scripts that are female driven, where the woman is not the victim, I thank God every day that I lived to see it, and the battle was worth it, just to see your smiley faces.
Well, first, I want to admit that I was born in 1958.
Oh, okay.
Just so you're aware.
Well, you look fantastic.
As do you. But
thank you.
Going back a little bit, was it always your intent or desire to direct, as opposed to be a performer or, be in any other part of film or television or theater?
I've always been a director. When I was in high school performing arts, there was an African-American teacher. Her name was Vanette Carroll, and she was a Broadway director. She directed Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope. She came from the islands. And I had never seen a woman director, never mind a Black woman director, never mind a Black woman director with such a presence that talked like this, and wore a piece of silver jewelry in her natural organic hair. Vanette Carroll was a force to be reckoned with. And Glenn Turman was a senior when I got accepted. I was like 14 and he was a senior. And so Vanette Carroll had a group called Urban Arts Corps. And that group, she picked some of us from high school performing arts, which included Chip Fields, Kim Fields' mother, who was raised in the building next to me and who I coached for her audition for performing arts, Glenn Turman, Melvin, several of us, Cynthia Jones, and we would go around to the prisons and to different, schools and stuff, and we would perform these plays. And I got a job at the Harlem Y as drama and dance director back then. And I started doing the plays. You know who else was working there? Renee Watson. Remember her? She was a star of the 80s. Yes.
Yes.
Renee was at the Harlem Y with me, and I was the drama and dance director. And I started directing the kids in the same plays that we were doing with Vanette Carroll. And I said, oh, this directing thing is kind of nice. It came easy to me. Of course, I was copying her, but, I really liked it. And so that was my first introduction into directing. And I enjoyed it. It came easily. And so while I was in college, they had a workshop in Harlem called the Frank Silvera's Writers Workshop. And that's where Ntozake Shange workshopped for colored girls. Richard Wesley workshopped The Mighty Gents and a couple of his plays that were on Broadway. Morgan Freeman was there. A lot of people were there. And so I went down there and I volunteered in the directors group. And so that's how I learned. I directed my first play, The Girl Beneath the Tulip Tree, which was written by a professor at NYU. And I called all my friends from performing arts and we did the play. And Vanette Carroll came and she said, darling, I think you have a taste for this directing thing, but I think you've been living in the art world too long. Truck drivers don't dress like that. You got to get in the real world. So, but I was happy that she thought I could do it. And it came easily for me. So I've always been a director. I've had 2 jobs all my life, directing and teaching. And they have a lot of similarities. Sit down, shut up, move over. Okay.
Stand there.
So, yeah. And so I've always been a director, and then I joined Third World Cinema in New York, an organization started by the late and wonderful Cliff Frazier and Ossie Davis, where they place you with people in the film business, give you a stipend, to get you started. So they placed me in editing with 2 Italian commercial editors, Paul Romano and Alan Rozak. They did all the Coca-Cola commercials. Wrigley Scott was doing commercials back then. It must have been 4 weeks into me rolling that film bin. I got a pain in my chest. I got off the bus and went to Harlem Hospital. Thought I was having a heart attack. I was strained from, winding those film bins. I went in the next day. I said, okay, I'm done. I'm done with the editing. I'm a director. I can't sit in this dark space anymore, But I learned a lot in that editing room that really helped me a lot when I got out to California and started directing film, because especially in television, it's interesting to learn to shoot to cut. And when you know how to edit, you know how to cut corners, and you also know what you need to tell the story. So that was a very good experience for me. I love theater too. I just love directing. I love what I do. I love telling stories that are meaningful. And, working in television, it was exciting. It was exciting back then for me. Like I said, a lot of people looked at me like I was on crack, like, who is this young girl? I was a kid. And I'd never been an AD or never been a script supervisor. I was always a director. And I think to this day, I haven't learned that I'm not the boss. So I'm always putting my 2 cents in and fighting for, a decent cut of something, because we, the actors, the crew, and the writers, we make the movie, we make the show. You do your cut and then you have to hand it over to the executive producers. And it's like, okay, you did your job. Now give it to me and I can make it better. But a lot of times that doesn't happen, So my union has made allowances for that now. We have what we call director's creative rights, which I have used twice. I used it on Raising Deanna and I used it on Genius Aretha, where you get the guild involved and you're allowed to go through every facet of your show. Not just your cut. You could fight for your cut. They have to respond. You're in all the post-production. And it really, I like Genius Aretha. I'm so proud of my 2 episodes. And people say, how did it come out like that? It came out like that because I made a lot of enemies and I was in every facet. So to answer your question, Sharon, yes, I've always been a director. Never wanted to do anything else.
And a little bit of a fighter. So what were you fighting for in Aretha?
Oh, girl, that's another show. Okay.
Oh, boy.
Well, briefly, I was excited. I took the job because I didn't know Susan Lloyd Parks. I knew of Anthony Hemingway, heard nothing but great things about Anthony. I love the cast and I love Aretha. Every Saturday growing up, all I did, my girlfriend Peggy Ann and we go get Sherman's barbecue and go to the Apollo at 12 noon, pay $5 and stay there till midnight. And we saw everybody. I would do that from the age of 14 to 20. Even when I was in college, we still did it. I saw every artist that you could ever imagine.
Wow.
Yeah, including Aretha Franklin. So when I got down there, the script was leaning toward making Aretha's father the father of her first child, which had been proven that he was not. He was a ladies' man, etc. But he also was one of the first strongest civil rights leaders in the country. In fact, Dr. Martin Luther King was his mentee at one time. They begged me to do the 2 episodes because it was about young Aretha, little Aretha. And since I was known to be an actor's director, I'm sure, they wanted a woman. So they could probably blame me for any inaccuracies that go wrong, But I was not in for that. I didn't come down there to make a movie about her father, perhaps impregnating her. I came down there to make a movie about Aretha. So the battle started. Cynthia wasn't happy with the script. Neither were any of us, Pauletta Washington, who's now a good friend of mine, played beautifully Aretha's grandmother. And for example, there was a scene where grandmother was sitting in the living room. I changed the whole thing. I don't know if you guys saw, but now she was in the kitchen. I changed it. The original scene was she was in the living room and little Aretha came in and said, oh, Granny, Aunt so-and-so said I may have a baby inside me. And so the grandmother said, oh, really? And then Courtney came in, who played the father, Courtney Vance, and was supposed to say, what's wrong? And so grandmother said, well, Aunt so-and-so said Aretha may have a baby inside her. And so his line was, well, maybe it's God's will. Well, I called up Pauletta. I said, Pauletta, I'm a fan. I'm directing these 2 episodes. But we have to talk about this scene. I don't think any grandmother, I don't care what color they are, who raised their grandchild for 12 years, sent her on the road with her son for 2 months, and she came back pregnant, would take it like that. No grandmother would do that. So we rewrote the scene. And it wound up being Pauletta taking Courtney in the room, slapping the hell out of him, saying you were supposed to watch her, on and on and on. And we rewrote the entire scene, and Pauletta got an NAACP nomination for that scene. And that was just one of many situations during those 2 episodes that we had to go through. That was Ron Howard and Brian Glazer, imagine. It was also National Geographic. And I wasn't very impressed with either of them. I can say that publicly. They would say things to me like, we did Einstein and we did Picasso, and Einstein, he had sex with his secretary. And I was like, well, what the hell does that have to do with Aretha Franklin? Einstein's not Aretha Franklin. And like I said, I didn't come down here to make this kind of movie, and I refuse. The producers didn't. I guess they were scared of me. They were never on the set. One of them was on the set, and I know she hated being on the set. She was trying. I overheard her say, "I'm trying to control Neema," and she didn't know I was behind her. And I tapped her and said, "You're wasting your time. You can't." But there was another scene. If you look at the episode where they were on the Chitlin Circuit, and it was written as if he was in one bed, she was in another bed. He had his underwear on. She gets up and said, my stomach hurts. It looked very sketchy. So I spoke to Courtney. I said, we have to change that. And I have to say, the cast had my back 100%. And Cynthia was fantastic to work with. And so they all were. And so I rewrote it, and I told him that I'm going to have you shining your shoes, because I remember my father used to hand shine his shoes. Then I'm going to do it in two shots. One with you shining your shoes, one with you in the bathroom. He's fully dressed. He has his suspenders, his pants on. He's shaving. And through the mirror, you see little Aretha get up out of the bed and walk toward him, become a 2-shot. With him in the foreground, her in the background. And she says, Daddy, my stomach hurts. And he hands her the Alka-Seltzer and said, here, drink that. I told you about hanging out last night. Now go get dressed, because God doesn't wait for anybody. So that was the scene. Cut to, I get a call from the producer, the one that tried to control me. Neema, where's the footage? Where's the footage? I said, call the editor. So she calls the editor. Where's the footage? The editor said, that's it. This is footage. So I thought to myself, checkmate, okay? Done and done.
One shot.
One shot, not going out like that. Good luck. And we had the great luck of getting Ron Howard's editor for the second set of editing, who is an African-American editor, who's excellent, who won an Oscar for Cutting a Beautiful Mind. And I worked with him on Raising Dion, and he came in, he had a little time. He was on his way to England to cut Ron Howard's new film. And he came in and he recut both of my episodes back to the original way. And they couldn't say anything to him because he's Ron Howard's editor. So wound up being a good situation, you know. I mean, they hated me to the point is when it was ready to come out, they called my agent and said, well, make sure Neema we don't want her doing any publicity for her 2 episodes, because which I let go. I didn't care. As long as my cut was locked and I was happy with it, I just wanted my shows to be good. And they were. So it was a battle that once again showed me that, unfortunately, a lot of production companies, and particularly white production companies who decide to do stories about people of color, are not really used to the people of color that they hire coming in with an opinion, coming in contradicting them with certain things, because it's like on Raising Dion, you know, I had issues with the star and her image as a young Black woman. And the showrunner was like, well, you know, my husband is Cuban. Well, okay, yeah, okay. So what does that got to do with a Black woman? I don't get it. You know, they get insulted, but it doesn't matter to me. I battle on. And as long as I get the job done and I get my point across, everything is not worth fighting for, but some things are. Aretha Franklin's story was worth fighting for, and we all fought for it. And I think it came out, well. I mean, he was a womanizer, but even in my 2 episodes, I made them put in a scene that he was also a strong civil rights leader. He was not only a womanizer, he was a civil rights leader, and he did a lot more than just run after women.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud that in my 2 episodes, we got that in. Yeah. And it wasn't easy, but it's okay.
How do you decide when to fight?
It depends on the subject,
Mm-hmm.
It depends on how strongly I feel, like in Raising Dion season 1, which I'm very proud of my 2 episodes too. I had to fight very hard for those. But, the showrunner had no idea how a Black woman lives, about Black culture. She was a single mother whose husband just died. There was nothing about her parents or her aunt or any extended family that came and put food in the refrigerator or help her before she got a job. We don't work like that. You know what I mean? And she said to me, well, her mother is mad at her. Yeah, okay, but she's got a little baby and her husband just died, and I'm a mother, and I don't care how mad a mother is. If her daughter's husband just died and she's in trouble and needs a job, the family is going to be there. You see what I'm saying? So It was just that battle. Or like, she's a dancer. There was no Black artwork on the walls. Listen, I went to the original high school performing arts. I have a lot of dancer friends. It was just a lot going on. And she was trying to make, I'm trying to make a show that everyone can relate to. I said, everyone will relate to it if it's good. Everyone related to Boys in the Hood, which was an all Black movie, but it was good. It was about human beings. And you're telling a story about a Black mother who has a Black kid. who is a superhero, who do you think the first people are who are going to watch it?
Yeah.
It has to reflect reality, which if you look at the original short that Dennis Liu, who was the Asian American, very talented young director who did the original short, if you look at his short versus how it wound up, it's big, and who was in the lead, it was a big difference, But Michael Jordan was involved, and he played the deceased father. He was wonderful.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I didn't get to work. He didn't work on my episodes, but he was very supportive. And Macro, with Charles King's company, was involved. They were very supportive. And Netflix was very supportive. Season 1, we had Seth Mann, who was a fabulous director and a fabulous person. And, he kind of did the whole book that got the show sold in the first place. And so he had my back 100%. It's important when you do these shows that you're working with showrunners that trust you and have your back and fight for what you're doing is right.
What are some of the other challenges about coming into an established show and doing an episode or trying to, bring it the authenticity or whatever it may need to tell the story properly?
I think that I'll just give you another example. I did The Equalizer because they were doing a special episode about a Latino mother who was crossing the border with her son because her life was threatened. And when she got across the border, they took her son away. I suggested we get an indigenous looking Latino, not a white looking Latino. So we get casting tapes and everybody's blonde and blue eyed. So I called the casting director. I said, this is in New York now. Okay. This was last year. It's not like 10 years ago. And I said, I thought we were looking for a more indigenous looking Latina. Well, it's hard. I said, it's hard in New York City. It's hard to get an indigenous looking Latina, a brown skinned Latina. So, wow, whoa, but we wound up, Queen was on our side and we wound up getting someone, very talented young woman. She was Puerto Rican, but we changed the script because every Latina doesn't speak the same way.
Yes.
So we had to fix that.
Mm-hmm.
And, the show came out very good. I knew I wouldn't be back because of the battles that I had to fight to get it done, but it's okay. I was proud of that episode and proud of what I could bring to it. When I did Reasonable Doubt, I didn't have any battles at all. The script was working. The showrunner was fantastic. The cast was fantastic. I just did my thing.
But it sounds like they come to you when they have something that they know needs to be done well and be done sincerely and be done right.
Yeah, well, I hope so. Yeah, I usually get little problem areas, they're specific about it. Well, you have to know that the first young lady they cast for Aretha Franklin was lighter than me. And when I got down there, and you know how you have, Anthony had all the cast photographs up on the wall. I said, who's that? He said, Neema, sit down. You're not going to believe it. That's little Aretha. I said, oh, no, Anthony. She can't be little Aretha. She's lighter than I am. Who would believe it? They cast it without him. And so we went. I was nervous because my 2 episodes centered on her. Mm-hmm. And finally, after shooting a week, they let Anthony recast it. He had to recast and he had to shoot that entire week over. But this is just an example. And the reason why I'm highlighting it is because, I was a Ron Howard fan. I didn't know Brian Glazer. None of them came down on the set to meet me while I was working. I didn't really get any respect except from the people who hired me, who never came down. They were very, very, very nice. And now they're doing Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. It's going to be interesting to see how that comes out. And Gina is executive producer. She's not a pushover. So, Gina Brythwood. So yes. I can't wait to see how that comes out because they thought they had a problem with me. I'm sure it's going to be good because Gina's not going to, go for any okie doke, But I was very disappointed at the treatment and the attitude, and I think that when we did it with Anthony and myself and the cast, they met their grandmama drunk, they realized this, got a slap in the face that, I don't care how big time they think they are, there are talented people of color in Hollywood who are going to fight them back. And it doesn't matter whether you call us back again. What matters is the image control of our people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and also the image control of women in general, you know, always playing the victim, this, that, and the other. It's just a constant, it's changing now, but it was constant, you know. So I don't think they're used to it, you know, still, unfortunately. I guess there's only a few of us who do speak up, you know. I don't expect anybody to speak up on my behalf. I could do it on my own. And, you know, the directors come and go in television. So we have less to lose. We're in and out anyway, you know, but the actors and other people, they're there for the duration. And so it's not as easy for them to speak up. I don't think they had any people of color executives, you know, in their organization to send down to help Susan Lloyd Parks, who had never showrun a television show before. She was a playwright, you know. So it was a difficult journey, you know. So I think, it's just one of those things where you just have to fight when you feel it, when it's necessary, when it's just like, oh no, this cannot happen. You know, I've even used lines like, oh, Black Twitter's going to kill you if you do this.
But they understand that.
Oh, yes. You think so, Neema? You think so? I said, oh, girl, you better fix that.
Nobody wants that.
No. Nobody wants Black Twitter to get them. So, yeah.
And it's Aretha. I'm like, I don't understand. This was 2021, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I was down there maybe about 5 months. It was a long journey. I did episode 2 and 3, and I'm very proud of those. It was just a battle with everything, with the Martin Luther King character. She cut that out and my man put it back in. It was just, that's that journey.
Well, let's take you back to the easier times of 80s television.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, this is probably a good time to take a break. We'll be back. Hey, listeners, let me tell you about a project I've been working on for a couple of years now. Famous Lake Park is an adult comedy puppet animation TV pilot about a wide-eyed intern, Josh, starting his dream job to work at his favorite childhood amusement park, Famous Lake Park. But instead of encountering the joyous dream of his youth, what he encounters is a metaphor for the dying American dream. It's weird, wacky, funny, adorable, and not safe for work. This is not a puppet animation workplace comedy for kids. This is South Park meets Avenue Q, and it is premiering at the International Puppet Fringe Festival in New York City in August. The festival runs August 12th through 16th. We are screening the movie the 15th and 16th, and the screening is free. We hope to sell out, so I recommend that if you are in the New York area, you go ahead and get your tickets now. I will be there. There will be at least one talkback. I think there's going to be 2, but come say hello. The link will be in the description, but you can find your free tickets at puppetfringenyc.com. They're being paid for by the Fringe so that they can be free for you. Please come and check it out. puppetfringenyc.com. And we're back, and better than ever. I'm curious about that moment where you saw your name on television, directed by Neema Barnette. Mm-hmm. Did you have that moment?
I did.
What did that feel like?
I cried. I was shocked. I was more happy to get that $3,500 check because we had been so broke. I mean, at that time, that was the most money that I had ever gotten in a week. You know, directing theater, you're lucky if you get that in 6 months, you know.
Yeah.
I felt a sense of accomplishment, and I felt a sense that I did it. You know, I got through it and I learned a lot, you know, and I enjoyed it. You know, there were ups and downs. There were ups and downs through all of it. But it prepared me for when I did Frank's Place and wound up getting signed by CAA, and then, you know, did a lot of those 80 shows like China Beach and
It's a Living,
Seventh Heaven. Okay. That was another time that they hired me because it was a special episode where Jessica
Biel?
Yes, Jessica Biel. Her high school coach was harassing her sexually. So that's what the episode was about. And I remember the Aaron Spelling people sitting me down and saying, Neema, we like your work with actors. We heard that you like to change the lines. Let me give you the rules. And Aaron Spelling, no one wears hats, no one wears glasses, and no one changes the line. I said, okay. There wasn't even a woman emptying garbage on Seventh Heaven. There was not even there wasn't a purple face or a green face. It was just all white faces. And, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. But I found that what I didn't know, I asked, because I would feel more stupid trying to pretend that I knew things around people who've been doing it for 20 years that I didn't know. And I think people opened up to me more because I admitted what I didn't know and that I wanted to learn. And then I was really good at what I did know, which is I had a sense of literature. I learned the lenses. I knew how to block because I had blocked in theater. Those things. And, I learned as I went, but it was, I think it was a time where I didn't look back. I just kept doing it. I didn't realize what I was doing. When I did Better Off Dead, was it in the 80s?
93, early 93. So 93.
Okay, girl, you got it. You know it.
I did a little bit of homework.
It's a Living.
Yeah.
That was my first one.
So I'm very, very curious because you did like 3 episodes of It's a Living, and we've covered It's a Living. So we talked to Paul Kreppel.
I'm sure I was the only Black director they had.
Yes.
I had a great time. They were very open and receptive. Anne was receptive. Shirley Ralph,
Yeah.
That was easy for me because that was almost like a play,
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it. When I signed, I did that after I signed with CAA. It was Ron from CAA, who's in charge of television. He said, you're a Black girl. You got to learn to do every format. I said, I want to do movies. He said, no, you got to do everything. I said, okay. So I did, every format. I did 1-camera film, 4-camera tape. I did after school special. Then I wound up doing 10 2-hour TV movies. I just did it all. My AFI film was at the Whitney Museum at the New American Filmmakers Series, Sky Captain. And David Putnam was there and he saw it. And so he called me and put me in his new director's program at Columbia Pictures. And at that same time, they called me for Frank's Place because a lot of the Black actors in Frank's Place I knew from Black theater in New York. And Sam Art Williams, who is a very excellent playwright out of New York, was one of the co-executive producer writers on the show. And he had written this episode called Frank Joins the Club, and he recommended me. Sam wrote the script, and he was so funny. He said, now, Neema, I want you to act like you don't know me on the set because I don't want you to get me in any trouble. I said, okay. And so one of the roles was I had suggested Max Julian, and Hugh Wilson, who was wonderful. He didn't know Max Julian. And then I said, what about Ron O'Neal? He never heard of Ron O'Neal. So I brought in Superfly and I showed him Superfly because my husband is a Black movie maniac. He had every movie. And I said, you should get him. So we got Ron O'Neal. And I will never forget the first day. I was so excited and I went on, to meet him. I said, hi, Mr. O'Neal. My name is Neema Barnette. He was chain smoking. He had his head down, chain smoking. I said, I'm so happy to meet you. He didn't say anything. I said, I thought maybe I should say one of his lines from the movie. So I said, nigga, your line is still ready. You could get it if you want. He looked up. He said, what'd you say? I said, nigga, your line is still ready. You could get it if you want. He said, wait, that's my shit. I said, yeah. He said, who are you? I said, I'm the director. I'm Neema Barnette. I'm the director and I'm a big fan. I learned another lesson that the Black actors who I thought were so brilliant, I saw him do Othello at the London Theater. So I knew he could do more than Superfly. And I learned a lesson doing Frank's Place that so many Black actors are so broken and damaged that when you give them a little attention, they don't even know how to take it. And I was a New York theater snob looking at these movies going, why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? Why aren't they doing something better? Then I got out to Hollywood and I learned through osmosis. I learned the answer. People have tried before us and people will try after us. It's a hard, tough road. It's a hard battle to fight. And I treated all those actors with such dignity and glory. Like Frances, I would make sure she was the older actress, make sure she always had a seat. And Ron O'Neal was such a gentleman, so fantastic. That episode won an Emmy, and he was the guest star of it. It's called Frank Joins the Club, where you're not lighter than a brown paper bag, and Hugh Wilson was wonderful. And I did another episode, and then there was another episode where he had Pam Grier on, because I introduced him to blaxploitation films. So he had to watch Pam Grier and named Pam Grier Neema. So I got my name in, nice. One of the episodes. Yeah, it was nice. And one of the executives at Columbia said, you should sign with CAA. I didn't know who CAA was. So when I went for the interview with Mike Ovis, I said, will you have anybody Black? He looked at me. He said, well, we happen to have a Black girl, just got out the mail room. And I'm going to put you with her and Michael Rosenfeld, Sonia. They're going to be your agents. I said, okay, as long as you have somebody Black, because I don't want to be in the slave camp. And he said, okay.
I'm sure no one had ever said anything like that to him before.
No. And he and I were born on the same day, December 14th. He said, oh my God. So anyway, that's how that happened. And then that's how I got It's a Living. It was shortly after that, doing China Beach, Rumor Peace, which also won a Peabody Award, where they thought the war was going to be over, but it wasn't. I told my agents, I want to do something else. I can't keep doing all these TV shows. So they got me an after-school special called Different Worlds. That was in the 80s. Mm-hmm. That had won a Junior Pulitzer Prize about a young Black guy and a white girl in high school together that witnessed a murder in a bodega. And I shot it on Super 16 in 4.5 days. And it won a couple of daytime Emmys and a Peabody Award. And it was that piece that got me Better Off Dead. It was that, taking that step back to do that little after school special to move forward into 2-hour movies.
Walking into a room as a Black woman in the 80s onto a set, into a room to basically try to get a job or do a job, and what that feels like, and how you go from Harlem to Hollywood.
Yeah, it was painful.
Yeah. Was some of it just kind of, you didn't, as you said, with other things, you didn't know what you didn't know, and you just basically just were yourself and said, hey, this is it. So
that's right, Sharon. That's exactly what I did. I came up at a time where we had leaders, where we were fighting for Black courses in college, where I had poets like Sonia Sanchez and Nikki Giovanni. We had Malcolm X, and we had H. Rap Brown, and we had leaders. We had the Young Lords in Harlem, Latin group fighting. We had the Panthers still around. So when I got out to Hollywood, I think my politics were kind of set. And so I just was used to confrontations, and I learned when we took over City College, the Young Lords gave us a course in strategy for revolution. And I took that course, what I learned, strategy of revolution, and I applied it when I came to Hollywood. So that's how I was able to pick and choose my battles and just kind of, maneuver myself through it. Because when I began to walk in the rooms, it hit me that I was the only one. Then it hit me that it was important that I need to be there. And I don't only need to be present. It's just like you sitting, like Malcolm said, you sit at the table, but that's not enough. You have to have something on your plate, and you have to be a diner. If you're not a diner, you're just sitting there. It doesn't make any difference. You have to have something on your plate. So I kept thinking about that and, just maneuvering myself in. And I think that I came at a time when actors were tired of the furniture pushers directing. A lot of the ADs and DPs and people who didn't have as much storytelling experience, as theater directors had. So when I was coming in, they wanted more. They wanted directors who could help them with the story. And that I knew. I had a sense of literature from theater, and I knew how to break a script down, and I knew how to tell a story. I knew going in the room that there was a 90% chance that I wouldn't get the job. A lot of times I did get the job. When I did Zora Is My Name, the Zora Neale Hurston piece with Ruby Dee and Lynn Whitfield and Paula Kelly and Oscar Brown Jr. and a lot of good people. Yeah, when I was doing Zora, when it came time to do the part about Zora losing her benefactor, and going downhill, the producers were like, we don't have time for that. We don't have time for that. I said, oh, no. I called up the Directors Guild. I said, hi, my name is Neema Barnette. I'm a new member of the Guild. I have a racial situation here. So he came and he made them move their monitors away from me. I said, oh, the Directors Guild has my back. And that's how I became a fan of the DGA.
Describe a little bit more what made you call the DGA and then how they solved it.
I'm going to have Ruby just strip as she's doing a monologue, just take her pearls off, take all the, not strip naked, but strip down as an image of her life going downhill. And they said, oh, we don't have time for that. And I think mainly it was, they were behind me, one, which was getting on my nerves. And two, when they didn't want me to do that single shot, which wound up being very powerful, of Ruby, who was, phenomenal, doing that monologue, taking her pearls off and everything. It was a bit much for me. And so I think that's what motivated me to call up the Directors Guild and say, this is an issue. And they said, well, what do you mean? I said, what do I mean? I said, as long as she's singing and dancing, everything is fine. But when it comes to the part of her life, where she was in trouble and she was going downhill, you want to cut that out. And that's an important part of her life. And I'm not going to stand for, being young and crazy, just going off.
Good for you, though. I'm loving that. I mean, that's clearly, it may, as you said, have cost you jobs, but it also got you jobs.
Yeah, that's true.
Actors remember that.
Yeah.
Producers, when they see it finally done, they're like, okay, fine.
Oh, listen, it was such a big hit. It got such great reviews. And, what makes me the most happiest, I'll tell you, must have been 2 weeks ago. I was going through Instagram and this organization, African American Women in Film, had written, I was on YouTube and I ran into this piece that Neema Barnette directed called Zora Is My Name. And she was so impressed with it that she put a piece of it on Instagram. And I thought, that's why I fought. How many years later? I mean, my God, 30 years later. And it's in every library. People still quote it, and in television, work doesn't last that long a lot of times. And to see it on Instagram, of all things.
You're inspiring a whole new generation.
With the truth.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like I went for an interview once in a studio. Guy wanted to do a story of the Panthers and he was going on and on and on. And so I said, but it didn't happen like that. And he said, no, I know it didn't happen like that, but that's the way I want to tell it. So I got up. I said, well, I guess this meeting is over because I'm not a distorter of history, that I cannot do. I mean, there's a lot of people in our business that have a lot of nerve, a lot of egos, a lot of overseers of other cultures. And you run into them mainly when you're dealing with stories about other cultures. So as long as people feel they could be an overseer, I think they feel comfortable. We have so much talent. We don't need overseers now. We need collaborators. If you're going to collaborate, that's fine. But if you're going to oversee, I think you just need to buy a plantation and get some slaves because nobody wants to deal with the overseer at this point. Yeah. I think that things are changing for the better. My God, a lot better. But there's still issues. Certain shows go on television because of the content and what they're saying. There's still a controlling force around. But it's getting better and better. Sorry, I went off the beaten track.
Let's talk about A Different World.
Okay. Great experience. I was mainly doing Cosby's, and Thad Mumford was one of the executive producers. I was under contract with Carsey Werner, and when Debbie didn't want to direct the episode, they would fly me out to do it. I did several episodes I was very proud of. They came out very well. One with Glenn Turman and Denise Nichols, got to work with her. And the kids were great. A Different World was a great experience. I had a couple of episodes, like once they wanted to put a mop on one of the young actresses' head and she was crying and I had to go in deal with, I can't remember the line producer's name, who was not very happy with me. But, I fought. We got the mop off of her head.
I bet she appreciated that.
She did, but that was a battle, and then they went into Debbie, and well, Neema's not doing what we want to do. Debbie said, well, why are you coming into me? I can't help you, So Debbie had my back, and I did Yvette Bowser's first, I think it was one of her first TV writing show, who's now she's a very famous writer and showrunner. I think I directed one of her first episodes that she wrote, and she was happy, and I enjoyed it. It was fun.
And was that your first time working with Debbie Allen, or had you worked with her before?
No, I did not. I worked with her sister on the Cosby Show, but I had never worked with Debbie Allen before. I didn't work with her then because she wasn't around. I love Debbie and how she's been able to use her fame to do good. I really enjoyed the Cosby Show. It's very creative because, Bill did not like to rehearse. So you come in on Monday, you read the script. And how I got my first episode was my friend had a mother's group, and I was directing Frank's Place. And Tom Werner's brother was at Culver Studios and saw me direct. Peter Werner told Tom Werner about me. And then Jay Sandridge called me during my lunch period into the room and said, I'm Jay Sandridge. I'm, work at the Cosby Show. And I was looking at your episode of What's Happening Now. I don't know if you could direct Bill Cosby because he never says the same thing twice. He never moves the same way. And you have all these strange film shots in your sitcom. And I didn't say anything. I said, mm-hmm. So cut to, I'm in New York directing the play. They called me. They say they want me to come to the set to meet the executive producers and meet Bill Cosby and Queen. So I go up there. And they said, well, can you observe? I said, no. I said, I can't observe. I'm directing a play off Broadway. If you want to hire me, just hire me. And I said, by the way, Mr. Cosby, my friend has a mother's group. And I was wondering if I could get tickets, for them. And he said, every time a woman is pregnant, they always want special treatment. And I said, well, if you were pregnant, you would know how women feel. And he looked at me, he said, what's your name again? I said, Neema, I just met you. He said, oh, yeah, okay, well, that's the show you're going to do. And he called the writers in. They hired me. And he had them write an episode where all the men get pregnant. And I directed it. And I remember Jay seeing me on the set, stopping me and saying, oh, my God, Neema, I heard the episode that Bill is going to have you do. And aren't you directing a play? Didn't your play go off Broadway? I said, yeah. Oh, well, I'll talk to Terry Gourmeri, who's one of the producers. And I think, I let them give you another episode. I'll take that episode. So then I did my Black women thing, put my hand on my hip. I said, that's okay, sweetheart. I got it covered. I said to myself, you're not getting that one. The funny thing was that episode got nominated for International Monitor Award. And they gave the ceremony at City Center. Jay was nominated. All these old guys were nominated. And I won. I won the International Monitor Award for Best Directing for The Days of Spores Landing. So after I did that, they signed me to a 2-year pay play. And it was great. Because like I said, Bill didn't rehearse. Come in Monday, like the script, but not like the script. Tuesday, we do a rehearsal, a reading. Wednesday, we would do rehearsal without him. And Thursday, we would shoot with a live audience. And that was it. So there was really basically no rehearsal, just a little bit, because mainly the scripts weren't ready. And it was almost like live theater. I think that's why I had such a good time and I enjoyed it so much, because it was spur of the moment, And I was able, they let me do whatever I want. I was able to shoot. I shot film style because that's what I knew. It was exciting in front of a live audience. And Bill had an isolated camera because he said whatever he wanted. Everybody else had to stick to the script, and it took forever to cut an episode. But it was very creative, very creative time. If you come in with creative ideas, it's good. If you don't come in with anything, it's not good. So I guess by my husband having done stand-up, I knew how to handle Mr. C. It's like you laugh at the jokes that even aren't funny, and then he wears himself out. He goes in the office, takes a nap, and then we rehearse everything while he's sleeping. And then he gets back up with a bunch of energy, and then we go again. So that's just like my husband. He did the same thing. So I just said, oh, yeah, Mr. C, maybe you should, go in the office, take a nap, and we'll just go rehearse. Okay, yeah, good idea. So that's how we got it done. But I learned a lot. Learned a lot about comedy. Viacom became a fan of mine, and they gave me a lot of work in the 80s. And I did Diagnosis Murder with Dick Van Dyke, which was a joy. What a wonderful person, funny. I was too green to know what not to do. So, some of the dialogue was just so bad and so wordy. I broke out laughing, and Dick would say, "What's wrong?" I said, "I'm sorry, Dick, but I don't understand a word you're saying." He said, "I don't understand it either." Coming from theaters, like some bad writing is just hard to digest, But yeah, so I was very fortunate. I learned a lot about comedy from these people. Then I got to work with John Ritter on Hooperman in the 80s. Then I got to work with Jason Ritter, his son, on Raising Dion season 1.
Oh, that's right.
He played the villain. That's right. He played the villain. So I brought a picture and I said, "Look, that's a picture of your father and I." I directed him. So, yeah, and it was fun. I enjoyed it because every show was different. And I got to fulfill creative juices in a different way. It was challenging, back then. Difficult, yes, in the fact that you feel the stares, you feel the doubts until you do what you do, and then they feel a little more comfortable. I got more comfortable with my ability as I went on. But what I knew from the beginning, I was very comfortable with, and that's my sense of actors and story. You felt alone a lot. I don't know why. I mean, I guess because I didn't see anybody who looked like me. And, there weren't very many women who were friendly, to me. Then when I met with Rosalind Heller and, of course, who, the queen of women's lib.
Gloria Steinem.
Thank you.
Okay.
Gloria Steinem was a producer, right?
Yeah, she was. She was one of the executive producers of Better Off Dead. I got a meeting with Gloria and Rosalind, and they said, "What do you think of the script?" And I said, "Well, it's typical. You have the Black girl who's in jail and the white woman who's her attorney." I think it was the first white woman, Black woman movie that Lifetime had ever done. And so she said, "Well, what would you do?" I said, "I switch it around. I make the Black woman the attorney who thinks she could do what her boss does, and she reaches a glass ceiling, and the white girl would be the bad girl." And they looked at me and they said, So I got my car, and then one of my agents called me. He said, "Pull over, you got the job." I said, "What?" Because when he called me first and he said, "How'd it go?" I said, "Oh," I opened my big mouth. I told him what I would. I told him to reverse the whole thing. Well, obviously it worked. They hired me. And I got to do Better Off Dead to work with Mayor Whittingham and Tyra Farrell. And that movie got rave reviews. And they said, "Why can't all Lifetime movies be like that?" Of course, it had every political issue but the kitchen sink, because you had Rosalind Heller and Gloria Steinem, But great experience. Got to work with Uli Steiger, a great DP. It was a racial issue there with Lifetime. They were calling me, telling me I was giving the Black woman more close-ups than Mayor, which wasn't true. I knew it was a racial issue, but I was directing. I didn't really have time to deal with it, but I just didn't pay him any mind. I just went on and did what I did. I got to hire my editor, David Beatty, who cut my AFI film, and we cut the hell out of it. We did a great job. We worked hard, and it was exciting. I had my friend Julie Dash, who's fabulous, who did Daughters of the Dust. She came out to Seattle with me just for a couple of days to visit, and it was exciting, doing the movie. I shot it in 18 days. And then they gave me a viewfinder that the whole crew pitched in, which was nice.
That's a lovely gift, getting a
yes,
viewfinder from the crew.
It was. And I was very happy. We had a great time. I mean, if I don't feel comfortable in an environment, I can't do my best. I don't do well creatively with a bunch of people on my back and too many restrictions, and I don't restrict my department heads. I hire them for their specialty, and I let them do it. I have, of course, as you know from talking to me this long, I have opinions. Well, what good director doesn't have opinions, But I'm a team player. You can't make a movie by yourself. It's a team. And so we had a great team, and we made it work. And then Gloria, of course, being famous, she took it all the way, all this publicity and everything. It was fun.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was proud of it. It came out to be a good movie. It's a classic, Mare was fabulous. And when I met her the first day, she hugged me. She said, I'm so glad you flipped that around. Gloria told me you were the one to flip it around. And she played the hell out of that bad girl,
I'm sure she loved it. She's always playing the good girl, if you will, the sort of down the earth, salt of the earth kind of character.
That's correct, Sharon. No, she loved it. She worked it too. It was a joy. And Tyra worked it. A lot happened. Mare got pregnant in jail. It was a mess. There's a lot going on in that movie. People like Rosalind and Gloria and Jean Furstenberg at AFI, who became like a second mother to me. These are women that really championed me and helped me. And during my down times, they were there along with my team of friends like Ayoka Chinzera and Julie Dash and Michelle Mateer and Uzan Palsy and all these early women of color filmmakers that we were all friends, and we would get on the phone and, console each other and talk about our experiences. I mean, I think it's important, particularly for women, to have a tribe.
Mm-hmm.
Like you guys are a tribe, you have to have your tribe. And so, I mean, that helped me quite a bit during the hard, difficult times of sexism, working in a man's world where everyone around you wants to be the director, television, and you come in as a director and you don't know they're, mumbling under their breath, and the DPs who want to direct and this and that. It could be a hot mess sometimes. But like I said, it comes with the territory, and you have to just prove that you're there to tell a story and you respect every job that everyone has and treat them with respect. And I think it'll work out. I came into a lot of difficult times because I was a woman, because I was Black, but it was okay. I knew, sometimes you could feel when these things are happening and people don't trust you or they don't respect you or they think you're just there. And I mentioned Warren Adler before because when I started working a lot, I called him. I said, Warren, are these people just filling a slot? He said, Neema, there's no affirmative action in this business. Because back then there wasn't.
Tell us a little bit about how you got involved with Queen Sugar and that story.
Well, right on the height of me doing all these TV movies and stuff, Gail Diva's Scattered Dreams with Tyne Daly and Joe McCraney, Lisa Silverstone.
We talked to Tyne.
You did?
We did for Cagney and Lacey.
That movie got an A&M People magazine and won 2 Emmys. I don't know how I did it. It was a big movie and I did it in such little time, but I did it and I did it well. It came out great. Anyway, I was at the height of TV movies and my mom got sick. So I went to New York. I left CAA. I left everything. I left my daughter and my husband in LA too. And I went back home to Harlem to take care of my mother, which lasted 5 years. So when I came back, I didn't have anything. I didn't have an agent. I didn't have a job. Gil Gates called me. This was in the late 90s. They didn't have anybody Black at UCLA who had a master's, so they asked me to teach. So I took the job to teach once a term there. Then Barbara Corday became head of USC. So that's how I was making a living. I was teaching at UCLA and USC. Then Mara Brock called me out of the blue, and she wanted me to direct a block of Being Mary Jane on BET. And because that special episode, like you said, with Jill Scott, and I didn't have an agent or anything. I said, I'll do it. So I did that. And Paul Garnes, who is Ava's producing partner, was the UPM on that show. Paul said, you should get Neema Barnette. I just worked with her. The crew loved her. I guess he thought the crew loved me because they all pitched in and bought me T-shirts with my face on the front and my saying, cut and print that sucker on the back. So I guess they did love me. That's my saying when I like a good take. Ava called me and she said, I'm going to offer you this job. You don't have to jump any hoops. You don't have to get approval from anyone. And I'm doing this TV show and it has all women directors. And I was like, huh? She said, all women directors. So what could I say? No. I said, well, of course. I didn't even know what a producing director did, quite honestly. But I said, yes, I'll take it, So that's how I got Queen Sugar season 1. And I was teaching it also at AFI. They put me on permanent faculty at AFI. And so I had to leave my little babies at AFI and go to do Queen Sugar. And that was a 13-month journey, season 1, with Ava. And I directed episode 3. She did 1 and 2. I did 3, and I did episode 7 with a group of very interesting filmmakers: Sally Richardson, So Young Kim, Kat Handler, Tina Mayberry, Tanya Hamilton, Victoria Mahoney.
Yeah.
It was a group, indeed, an interesting group. And we went on and we made season 1 of Queen Sugar. It was sweat and tears. I will say it wasn't easy, but, I had quite a bit of experience in television that I tried to give them as far as what would work and what wouldn't, but also keep what Ava wanted, which was not to do it the regular way, to allow, because these women were talented. They had done movies already, but they were trying to get into TV to make some money for years, and they couldn't do it. So, instead of having a Luma crane, I told them, we'll just put the cameraman on a ladder and have him do a high shot, because you don't have the money. And so the ratings came out, and I started getting calls. But what a joy it was to work on Queen Sugar. What a joy it was to work with all women directors. I'm thinking when Ava completed Queen Sugar was last season, she had called me back to be producing director of the final season, but I was booked. I couldn't do it. But I did do Naomi for her. But she's got about 40-something women in the Directors Guild. She created an army.
She changed the face of television.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did.
That's the power that people in charge can do, and she used it for that.
Oh, yes, she did. She is a force to be reckoned with, brilliant woman. And she changed the face of television.
Yeah.
And people don't give her enough credit for that. And there has not been an all-woman directing show since Queen Sugar. I doubt if there will be. I mean, Ava got calls from male directors. Why? That's not fair. They complained to the Directors Guild. How can she have all women? I mean, it was deep. But Ava persevered, and Queen Sugar was a fantastic show. Queen Sugar was special. It was a unique show. I'm honored to this day to have been a part of it, particularly season 1, which I think was one of the best seasons. But I say that personally. But I think that with all the tears and agony that we went through, sometimes you need to go through that creatively to get the best product. So I wasn't surprised. Like I would always tell Ava, don't worry about the budget, because if it's a hit, and it was, season 2, she got 2 DPs, 2 ADs, 2 sets of crews, Bottom line is to make it good. And that's what we did. We made it good. And then it went on for like 6 seasons, I think, and made all these women's careers. I mean, Sally executive produced that Lakers HBO show. Saw So Young Kim's name on something. She did a 5-part special series for Netflix. And Tanya Hamilton was one of the producing director on the Wrigley Scott show. They're all doing amazing things. That first season set it off. I mean, a lot of people are working from the other seasons too. Ava gave Julie an episode one year, and then gave Ayoka Chinzera, my other old friend for 30 years, another episode. She loved it so much. She retired from Spelman, where she was head of Spelman, and now she's running around directing TV and loving it.
I love it.
And Julie did Women of the Movement as well, and a couple of other TV shows. They like it because they're independent filmmakers, Ava changed the face of television, and I adore her. And I always give her credit for reaching out and hiring me and really re-energizing my entire career. And you can't say that too many people do that.
No.
So many people don't remember who was there first and what we did. But she did remember. And I'll always love her for that.
Yeah. And honor it with action, which is incredible.
Oh,
yeah.
Always with action. And not only that, she didn't leave them hanging. When the directors completed their journey on Queen Sugar, she had agents lined up for them. She made sure that they got agents. She got them jobs and agents in the beginning. So they weren't left hanging,
Right.
That's so rare.
Because even at AFI, I did a master class several months ago with a bunch of students, and I'm helping them get jobs. They're graduating the thesis film. They're scared to death. They don't know where to go. No one's offering them anything. It's scary.
It's a tough time.
Yeah, it's a tough time. I mean, it's important not to leave young artists out in the cold when they leave the wound of school, where it's warm and comfortable in a creative environment. And then you go out in the world and you're like, okay, what do I do now? I mean, I've been told stories by students where their teachers tell them, well, why don't you buy some property and then you could use the money you make from the property to make your film. And the girl told me, she said, Neema, my parents took a third mortgage out on the house to send me to AFI. So I don't know what he's talking about. I mean, film is an elitist business, when they first mentioned to me way back in the 80s, well, you have to observe. I was like, ooh, no. I cannot afford to observe. I have a little baby girl. I got an actor husband who's out of work. I got to work. When I did the Cosby Show, I said, I'm not observing on anything. I'll observe if you hire me, if I'm guaranteed a job. And again, they looked at me like I was on crack, but they did hire me and then I observed. So because you can't leave people hanging out there like that, they don't know what to do. And now it's even more competitive. When I was doing TV, not a lot of people, filmmakers, wanted to do TV. It was looked down upon where I came from. Now everybody's doing TV.
Yeah. Going back to Queen Sugar for just a moment, you mentioned you went there as a director, producer. Can you talk a little bit about what the producer aspect of your role was and what you were doing?
Mm-hmm. I was on the set every day and I tried to create a new paradigm and not use it like the guys used it in the past, but have my position just be an encouraging position to their vision, but just teach them how to do it on a television budget. And I worked a lot in the producing capacity, just like that on the set, not money wise, but showing them how, looking at their vision and giving them options, because we didn't have the money for a Luma crane or we didn't have the money for a drone. So how else can you get that vision across? And I would give them several alternatives to that, and encourage them in areas, that they weren't used to. Like So Young Kim asked me, what does she do? I said, she's a script supervisor. What does a script supervisor do? Because So Young Kim did her independent movies with her DP, her actor, and that was it. She didn't have a script supervisor. She didn't know what a script supervisor did. So introducing them to the tools that they have, that a lot of them didn't have when they were doing their independent films, so they could focus more on directing. Like So Young Kim said, oh, so many words, Neema, too many words. I said, well, welcome to the world of television. You got two little baby girls. You want to get their college degree. You want to make some money. There's nothing you could do about this verbal diarrhea. It's going to be there. And you just try to put as many images in as you can and keep it moving. And she's doing great now. But, these were some of the things I was able to contribute. Long talks, going over their shot list, helping them, adjust.
Helping them to succeed both as becoming television directors, working television directors.
Yes.
And creating an environment that will hopefully encourage them to do the same as they move forward in their lives, instead of what seemed to be in the past, well, I had to go through the tortures of the dam, so you figure it out yourself kind of mentality that seemed to exist before. So that's amazing. That's really, really amazing.
I mean, if you think making a movie is like Entertainment Tonight, you're wrong. It's more like construction work. It's no joke. If you never took vitamins before, you better take them now. But that is no joke. Shooting a show or a movie is no joke, and TV is very fast paced. But it worked out. It worked out, and the actors were wonderful. The directors came with what they had, which is talent, and did great episodes. I know once I was going through Facebook, I'm not going to mention her name because she was in Leslie's and I class at AFI, said something about, well, they're always talking about Ava. And I got very upset and I wrote a rebuttal on Facebook. It's like, okay, yeah, because Ava DuVernay changed the face of television, and no one has ever since her done a show with all women directors of every color and every nationality. she deserves all the credit she gets.
Yeah.
Because trust me, there's a lot of people that didn't like what she did, as you can imagine.
Sure.
And what she did. But she held on, she held strong. And I was so happy that the show came out so beautifully, because that gave her something to really, stick her chest out with. And if you know Ava, she worked it.
Yeah.
She worked it, and she loves women.
Yeah.
And she fought for us, and she knew, from her own experiences as a young director and all the doors that were closed and all the things that people said to her. Trouble with women is that we don't get as much experience as the men, so we can't perfect our craft as much as the men can. And we need that experience. And like you said, Sharon, which is very important, for them to open up the doors to other women. That's the key. And I think that's what Ava wanted most. The future will tell. Since I left Queen Sugar, I think I mentored 12 women, got them all in the guild. They all, shadowed me, and I work with them. I still do it, and I'm sure a lot of other people do it.
Thank you. That's hugely important.
Yeah, you are to be commended for that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. But, no, it's very important. I mean, I don't think I'm going to be commended. I do it because I know it's important, and someone did it for me. And, guys, I'm a street girl from Harlem, and I'm loyal. When someone does something for me, I don't forget it. And I know it's important, and you have to reach out. That's the main thing. We have to let each other in. And that's why I'm here today.
Well, we so appreciate it.
Because you guys called me, and I said I have to do it. I don't like to do too many, shows. You don't see me too much doing these things. I get some offers, but this I thought was important.
You accepted ours.
Thank you so
I did.
much.
Well, I'm an
Fantastic.
80s girl.
Yeah.
You are. Now, I just wanted to, did you work with Susan Hill on A Different World?
I did work with Susan, and I worked with her mother, Josephine Permis, on the Robert Guillaume show.
Oh, all right.
So I loved her mother. Mother gave me a beautiful pair of earrings, which I still have in my jewelry box. I'm afraid to wear because they're so gorgeous. She got it from Paris. Her mother was friends with Josephine Baker.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Susan Fair's mother was a star. I didn't go to Harvard. I didn't go to Yale. I went to City College, and then I went to NYU graduate school. So, like I said, film is the elitist business. And there's a lot of cliques and a lot of different tribes out there. So my battle was a little more difficult because I didn't have those Ivy League connections. Mm-hmm. But I got there, I got there.
Where can people find you?
My husband and I have our Black History mini docs.
And I love them. They're so fun. They're so great. They're so make you want to go look up everything. It's great.
Yes. We're going on our 10th year. And we were featured at the Abraham Lincoln Museum last Black History Month. A scholar from Harvard did a whole month, and every day showed Black History mini docs. And you can go to our blackhistoryminidocs.com site and see all the mini docs we did. It's a family affair, and we do it for free because we both felt, what could we do? What could we do? One thing we do know, if you don't know where you come from, you'll never know where you're going.
Exactly.
And I think that there's so many, like I said, from my experience in Hollywood, particularly working with actors of color, noticing how damaged and broken they were and how badly they were treated. I thought it was very important. My husband and I both thought it was important for them to know what royalty they come from, so it's important. And so we're very proud of our Black History Mini Docs. So they can reach me on blackhistoryminidocs.com or on Instagram, Neema Films, or on Facebook. I'm there. Social media, I'm there.
Okay.
Ava taught me that. I was not on social media before Ava, but Ava does not play with that social media.
No.
She's like, you gotta do it.
Well, she started as a publicist, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. She knows the power.
Oh, yeah. She actually grabbed my phone and put me on those social media. She was like, Neema, you got to do it. So, and I want to take a minute to thank you women for what you do. I think it's fabulous.
Thank you.
And I'm going to be a fan because I'm a podcast person. And I'm honored that you guys called me because the 80s was an important time for me, important time for everybody in television. A lot of things changing. So continue on, sisters, queens, continue on.
Thank you. And we look forward to hearing your thoughts when you listen to some of the episodes. We always like to hear what our listeners think about the episodes. And so now you'll be one of them. So that'd be great. Love to hear from you.
Well, thank you, Sharon. Take care, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you're looking for gear that aligns with your values, you have to check out Terrain. They create beautiful, durable bags from upcycled feed bags and recycled bottles, handcrafted by fair trade artisans in Cambodia. No two designs are exactly alike, so your style is always unique. We've arranged for the best possible deal for our listeners, 15% off any product. Just head to our 80s TV Ladies My Deals link in the show notes to see all our 80s TV Ladies deals and use the promo code 80s TV Ladies.
I'm going to use our 21% off discount at Cozy Earth to get some amazing soft bamboo sheets for our new house. You can go to 80s TV Ladies My Deals link in the show notes to see all our 80s TV Ladies deals. Use promo code 80s TV Ladies and get 21% off Cozy Earth. For our audiography today, you can find out more about Neema Barnette at Instagram.com/NeemaFilms and on Twitter at Twitter.com/NeemRick, NeemRick.
And you can watch the really cool Black History mini docs she mentioned at blackhistoryminidocs.com.
The advertising you hear on this show covers very, very, very little of the cost of producing this show. The best way to support this show and not hear ads is on patreon.com/80stvladies. We really appreciate your support.
Our next episode will continue our look at a different world. Actually, dear listeners, as we come out of our summer of transitions, I'm happy to report that our next episode is a new one, where Susan and I talk about our end of summer and the 1980s TV fall preview promo shows and the golden age of TV Guide. Let's wrap up summer with a look back and a leap forward. Join us. We hope 80s TV Ladies brings you joy and laughter and lots of fabulous new and old shows to watch, all of which will lead us forward toward being amazing ladies of the 21st century.
Like Neema Barnette.
We wish.